Have you ever experienced a moment when in exactly 3 seconds you realized that the person who could hurt you the most was not an enemy, but the very child you once carried on your shoulders throughout their entire childhood? I have. And that moment did not happen in an argument, not in a family meeting, but right in front of my daughter's house, when she looked me up and down and said, in a voice without a single tremor, without a hint of hesitation, "Dad, you don't match the vibe of successful people." That was when I knew. Sometimes justice is not born from a judge or a jury. It is born from a heart that has had enough, a soul pushed into the darkness for far too long. If any line in this story makes you pause for a moment, whether it is a sentence that stings a little, an old memory you thought you forgot, or a faint feeling of, "I've been there," leave a single dot so I know you are here, listening and walking with me on the journey to reclaim the truth we once feared to face. And thank you, truly thank you for giving me the chance to share this story with all the sincerity I have. 5:42 in the evening in Seattle always comes with a very strange kind of light. The sky has started to darken, but it still keeps a thin layer of blue, as if someone placed a cold filter over the entire city. That light mixes with the blue glow from the 3 screens in front of me, making the small upstairs office look more like the cockpit of a spaceship than the corner of a man nearing 60. On the left screen, I was opening the logs of an attack from 3 years ago. A system in Bellevue had once been hit by ransomware, and last week they emailed me, "We think we're clean, but we want you to double-check." I still like people like that, the ones who don't wait for the house to burn before calling the firefighter. Lines of text ran down the screen, timestamps, IP addresses, status codes. To anyone else, it was a jumble of meaningless characters. To me, it was almost like the diary of a midnight robbery. They told clearly when the intruder arrived, which door they used, what they touched, and where they left footprints. I leaned slightly toward the screen, eyes following a sequence of unusual requests from an IP in Eastern Europe. My finger moved the mouse, marking the section I needed to examine more closely, preparing to extract a snapshot to attach to the report. Right then, my phone vibrated beside the keyboard. The screen flashed. Harper. I didn't need to look closely. I had saved her name with a small golden leaf icon because she was born in the middle of autumn. I picked up almost on instinct. "Hello, Harper." "Dad." Her voice was the same, a warm, quick tone I never imagined would one day come back and hurt me. Just hearing it brought back the image of her at 10 years old, in a green hoodie, legs dangling from the swivel chair in my office. "Yeah, I'm here. What's going on, kiddo?" I heard noise behind her, the familiar sounds of a modern kitchen, glasses clinking, the refrigerator closing, faint background music. "Dad, I need one small thing," she said, as lightly as if asking for an extra spoon of sugar. My heart tightened a little, not from worry, but from habit. Almost every time Harper called, that sentence showed up somewhere. "A small thing?" I tried to keep my voice cheerful. "Yeah. This week, Calder and I are hosting Friendsgiving at the house in Kirkland. Our boss is coming, and 2 directors are coming. I booked catering, but..." She paused just long enough for me to know exactly what was coming next. "But the cost is higher than I expected. The service said there are extra guests with special orders. The total is $2,400. I'm a little short." I glanced at the corner of the screen where the online banking window had been left open since the morning. Another habit. I always kept that tab ready, the way people used to keep a checkbook on the table. $2,400, huh? Yes, I know it's last minute, and it's not a big deal or anything, but I really don't want to use the credit card. This month we can't keep up with the mortgage and all the fees. I heard that thin layer of tension in her voice, part pressure, part embarrassment, and I had always been weak to that. "All right," I said, my hand already on the mouse. "Send me the account number, or is it still the old one at Rainier Credit Union?" "Still that account, Dad." Harper exhaled like a weight had been lifted. "Thank you, Dad. Really." I typed quickly, barely needing to look at the keyboard. The number 2400 appeared on the screen, then disappeared when I hit confirm. The screen showed successful. Transfer completed. There, I said. The money should arrive in a few minutes. Oh my God, Dad, you always save me. She laughed, and for a moment, I almost forgot I was sitting alone in a cold office with a back that hurt from years of leaning over screens. I'll make it up to you. When I get the official promotion, No need, I cut in gently. You just need to take care of yourself. That's enough for me. On the other end, the music shifted. Harper was probably walking from the kitchen to the living room. I heard Calder say something in the distance. His voice always carried a bit more confidence than necessary. By the way, Harper, I leaned back in the chair, what time should I show up that night? I can bring the pumpkin pie or the cranberry sauce. The one your mom liked, remember? Silence. Not the kind of silence where someone is checking their schedule or thinking about a convenient time, but the kind that changes the temperature in the room. The microphone couldn't pick up the cold, but my ears caught it. Harper, I prompted. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Same pitch, same daughter of mine, but something had been peeled off, some warmth removed, leaving only a bare, dry core. Dad, she inhaled, then spoke quickly. Actually, that night isn't really a family Thanksgiving. It's more like a business dinner. Oh, I frowned. That's fine. I'll be polite and sit in a corner. Your boss probably... What I mean is, she cut in sharper. Dad, this dinner is for important people in my field. The CEO, the VP, and the people from the core product group. They're different. I don't want things to fall out of vibe. Out of vibe. In her mouth, it sounded like an accusation. I looked down at the gray sweater I was wearing. Completely normal. Not fancy, not torn, nothing. Just a sweater. Out of vibe? I repeated, not believing I heard right. You mean I shouldn't come? On the other end, Harper paused for several beats. I heard Calder's voice, again, clearer this time, not quite a whisper. Just tell him. I don't want my guests seeing some old flannel guy driving an old Subaru. Maybe they thought I couldn't hear, but my ears had long been trained to sift signals out of noise. I heard every word. Harper rushed to talk over him. Dad, don't take it the wrong way. It's not that I don't want you. It's just I've told everyone a certain version of you. That you like living quietly. That you don't like crowds or networking. If you suddenly show up, it'll be hard to explain. That phrase, a certain version of you, cut deeper than Calder's old Subaru. So for years, she'd been painting some alternate version of me to the world. A poor, outdated Elliot Crane she needed to rise above. Harper, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady, I transferred the money so you could cater that dinner, and you're telling me I can't come? Dad, she inhaled again, I know it sounds terrible, but this is a big opportunity for me. I'm trying to get promoted to senior marketing lead. Victor Halden will be there. I don't want anything messing with the image I've built. I've spent years proving I'm not like you. Not like you. I leaned back, my eyes drifting to the photo frame above the center monitor. Mira, 37, smiling with her head tilted as the Elliott Bay wind blew her hair wild. Harper was 8 that day, running after seagulls. In the picture, I was off frame, holding the camera. I always thought I'd be there, in the background, supporting the two of them. And I had done exactly that for 20 years. I never imagined that one day my daughter would use that very background as something to step on, then turn around and say, I don't want to be like you. So, I said, one word at a time. In the house I helped pay the down payment for, with the catering money I just transferred, there will be a long table for your boss, your colleagues, and Calder. But there won't be a place for you. On the other end, Harper let out a small cry, but not the kind that breaks a person open. It was the kind of cry someone makes when they see a crack but don't want to fix it, only want to paint over it. Dad, don't say that. You always make everything sound so heavy. It's just one night. We can have our own dinner later. I promise. I'm not the one making it heavy, I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. You're the one who gave it weight when you decided who deserved a seat at the table. There was a silence longer than the others, long enough that I could hear the computer fan, the faint whir of the hard drive under my desk, then Harper, sounding tired. I have to finish cleaning up. The catering will be here soon. I got the money you sent. Thank you. We'll talk after Thanksgiving, okay? Yeah, I said, after the holiday. The line clicked off. The screen went dark, leaving only the tiny yellow leaf icon next to her name in the recent calls list. I set the phone down gently, as if it were something fragile. The room suddenly felt larger than it should. The blue light from the monitors was no longer familiar. It turned cold, like the interrogation room lamps I'd seen in movies. I reached for Mira's photo frame and held it up. You heard that, didn't you? I asked someone who was no longer here to answer. The eyes in the photo still smiled, the way they always had. I set the frame down, but this time face down on the desk. The motion startled even me. In the 12 years since Mira passed, I had never once placed her face down. Maybe this was the first time I felt I no longer had the right to look directly at that old picture of what our family used to be. That feeling lasted exactly 3 breaths. On the 4th, the other part of me, the part that had spent 20 years reading logs, tracing footprints, recognizing patterns, switched on. I picked up my phone again and tapped a few buttons. The call log opened, showing the time, duration, and number. My hand automatically took a screenshot and sent it to a cloud folder. Occupational habit. No data is useless if you know when to use it. I turned back to the monitors. The banking tab was still open. The line, transfer completed. $2,400 to Harper Crane. Glowing bright. The cursor blinked, waiting. I didn't close the tab. Instead, I opened an Explorer window, clicking through folders until I reached the drive most people thought I only used to back up work. Near the bottom of the list, between cold folder names like Log 2019, Client Backups, and Incident Reports, there was a folder I'd named simply Harper, 20 years. I clicked it. The files and subfolders appeared like a compressed timeline. Tuition U, Year 1, PDF. Wedding, San Juan, Islands, Invoice, PDF. Kirkland, Down Payment, Wire.png. Insurance for Harper, 25, Yo. DocX. Each name was a piece of a life I had thought I was giving away without needing to count. My fingers scrolled to the end. There was a small Excel file. Support.summary.xlsx. I opened it. The numbers appeared neat and organized, updated each year out of quiet habit. The last row had a bold total. The number beside it, $231,000. I sat still, staring at that number, while outside the window, the Seattle sky finally went fully dark. A man sitting alone in an old house north of the city, in the blue glow of 3 monitors, had just been told he didn't fit the new image by the very daughter he had poured $231,000 and the rest of his life into raising. I felt something inside me crack, not the kind that could be patched with a make-up dinner after the holiday. And for the first time, I didn't just feel hurt. I felt something else, colder, rising slowly, the need to see this story all the way to the truth. I sat for a very long time in front of the screen, long enough that the blue light on my hands looked like a thin layer of mist covering me. And finally, I reopened each folder inside Harper. 20 years, where I had saved everything across 2 decades as a way to remember that a father loves his child through actions, not words. The first folder, Harper, University of Washington, UW. I clicked it. The PDFs popped up one by one. Tuition turned Year 1 PDF, dorm fee, laptop, receipt, and U.medical bill. The total at the bottom corner of the Excel sheet, $124,000. I remembered clearly the year Harper applied to college. She shook so hard from fear of being rejected. The day she got accepted, she ran into my office, threw her arms around my neck, and said, "Dad, I did it." I stood in the middle of old networking equipment I was repairing, tears running down my face without me understanding why. I once thought moments like that would stay forever. I closed that folder and opened the second. Wedding, San Juan Islands. Everyone knows island weddings aren't cheap, but I still agreed. I wanted Harper to have one day in her life where she didn't have to worry about anything. Venue fee, $18,500. Catering, $11,200. Boats for guests, $3,800. Other small expenses, $4,500. Total, $38,000. I remembered that afternoon, the wind on San Juan Island was so strong the tablecloths kept lifting. Harper laughed when her wedding dress blew back, and Calder laughed while fixing his tie. When she turned to thank me, her eyes shining, I told myself, "Mira, do you see this? Our daughter found happiness." But Mira was no longer there to nod. I opened the third folder. Down payment, Kirkland condo. The condo Harper and Calder live in now. They called me one winter evening. "Dad, this place is perfect, but we're short on the down payment. If we miss it, we'll regret it forever." I wired $67,000 in 11 minutes. At that age, I still believed helping your child settle down was a natural responsibility. The wire confirmation appeared on the screen, and I wondered, maybe that day I should have listened more closely to Harper's tone, paid more attention to Calder's eyes that looked like they belonged to someone used to receiving without giving. I leaned back in my chair and looked around my small workspace, the wooden shelf I built with my own hands, the old swivel chair from when Mira was alive, the computer I built myself piece by piece. My house isn't fancy, it's not glossy. It's the kind of place people walk into and feel calm, simple, old, but real. I looked around, then unconsciously compared it to what Harper had said earlier. I told everyone you live like a recluse in an old, outdated house. Funny, when she was young, this was the house she ran through, hid behind the sofa in, scribbled on the walls, curled up in my lap every night for stories. And now, she wanted to reject those things just to fit the vibe of the polished world he dragged her into. I touched a small photo next to the monitor. Harper at 9, sitting on my shoulders at Gasworks Park. That afternoon, the wind from Lake Union blew so hard she giggled until her legs kicked my chest, and she still asked me to lift her higher. "Dad, I want to see all of Seattle." Mira stood below, holding a water bottle, watching us and saying a sentence I've remembered all my life. "You're the one keeping this family standing." Keeping it standing, not the richest, not the fanciest, just standing. And now the child who once sat on my shoulders was telling me I didn't fit the narrative she'd crafted to step into the home she lives in, a home I paid nearly half for. A quiet kind of pain came over me, not loud, not sharp, but cold, like the tiny cracks in concrete you can't see until winter makes them split. I scrolled to another file that had slipped to the bottom. Email, Harper age 24. MSG, I opened it. It was the email Harper sent me when she was 24, right after Mira passed. I remembered those days, the 6-figure medical bills, the mortgage, the endless repairs on this old house. I was alone in a 3-bedroom home far too big for one person, filled with empty spaces Mira used to fill with laughter. I had planned to sell the house, to pay off medical debt, buy something smaller, and keep the rest as backup. But at that exact moment, Harper emailed me, "Dad, don't sell Mom's house. Keep it. I'll take care of you later. Just trust me." And I trusted her. I kept this house for 12 years because of that sentence. And now, the child who once begged me to keep her mother's memory intact had just told me I didn't fit her new image enough to step into her own home. I sat in the small living room in Seattle, the house where Mira and I laughed ourselves tired after each argument about who messed up the sofa cushions, And I felt the heartbreaking contrast, a father who lives simply, and a daughter who now sees simplicity as something shameful. A flashback hit me. An afternoon at Gasworks Park I'll never forget. Harper was about 10, still at the age where the world feels safe as long as she's beside her dad. She ran up the grassy hill, the Lake Union wind whipping her brown hair, then turned back to look at me, her eyes bright like raw steel in the sun. Mira stood next to me with a cup of hot coffee, quietly saying, "You know, as long as our home stands strong, she'll never be afraid." I didn't fully understand that line back then. Now I do. I looked at the wall where that photo still hangs, then back at the email Harper sent me years ago, 2 images so opposite they made my chest tighten. Harper had changed. I just refused to see it. I closed each folder slowly, like someone reading the obituary of their own father-daughter relationship. And then, in the quiet room with only the Seattle wind brushing against the window, I said a sentence quiet enough no one outside to hear, but loud enough to change everything. Whether they want it or not, I'm going. I left Seattle a little after 6 in the evening, the sky still holding a thin mist of rain and a cold draft slipping through the window frame of the 2008 Subaru Outback. The car Mira once loved because it doesn't show off, it just endures, like the person who drives it. The road circling Lake Washington opened into the lights of the luxurious Kirkland homes, huge glass fronts, modern sloped roofs, golden lights reflecting on the water, so the whole neighborhood looked like a postcard for the upper class. I parked along the curb. The wind off the lake carried the smell of damp pine needles and a sharp, cold, brushing the collar of my flannel, making the Outback's engine sound even more out of place among the row of luxury cars out front. The line of cars stretched long: Tesla Model X, Rivian R1S, a pearl-white Porsche Taycan, each reflecting the living room lights onto the wet pavement, like stage lights at a tech product launch. Shiny vanity plates, one reading Impact, another reading CLDAR NXT, as if the entire street wanted to say this was a space for people who had climbed high enough to believe others were beneath them. I stepped onto the polished basalt steps, shiny enough to reflect my own silhouette. A man in a faded flannel standing before a house he once helped his daughter pay the down payment for, but who was now considered someone who ruined the atmosphere of the party. The faint oak scent from 2 Scandinavian wall sconces made the space warm yet distant, and inside came the sounds of about 20 people laughing, glasses clinking, red wine aromas drifting out, live jazz and the tapping of heels on hardwood. At that Successful People's Thanksgiving, where everything was curated to look perfect, including the way they excluded anything that didn't fit the vibe. I knocked 3 times. The door opened. Calder stood in the doorway wearing a tailored navy suit, a Tag Heuer watch flashing under the light, his face carrying that half-smile people give to something they consider beneath them. His eyes flicked down to my old flannel, his brow lifted, and he dropped a line sharp as a blade. "You're really wearing that? Harper told you not to come. This isn't a place for labor-class folks." Behind him were a few men in expensive suits, and 2 women holding glasses of red wine. One tilted her head at me and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "That's her dad? He looks rough." A young staffer raised his phone, the lens pointed right at me, ready to capture the moment a father got turned away at his own daughter's door. Calder didn't step aside. He stood firmly blocking the entrance, using his body itself to say, "I didn't belong here." Then Harper appeared, her eyes flickering when she saw me, but only for a second. One glance toward the guests behind her, and her expression shifted, surprise to annoyance, annoyance to embarrassment. "Dad," Harper said, her voice small but cold, like fresh ice forming on the lake, "you're embarrassing me. Please go home. I told you. Tonight isn't for you." Those words alone would have been enough to kill something in my chest, but unfortunately the entire room had heard them and was watching. A group of staff near the bar whispered, I think that old guy is Elliot Crane. That name sounds familiar. That whisper made a few people's eyes shift, but Calder clenched his jaw and Harper stood frozen, as if she didn't understand why my name would make anyone pay attention. I turned away, not because I lost, but because I needed to keep whatever dignity I had left. But just as I stepped down from the last basalt stair, a voice sounded from behind me, deep, steady, and familiar enough that the entire house went silent. "Mr. Crane? Are you really Elliot Crane?" I turned back. Under the warm lights of the living room, the crowd naturally parted, as if making way for someone they respected. And then he appeared. Victor Halden, CEO of Halden Cyber Defense, a man whose name alone in the cybersecurity world was enough to make boardrooms adjust their posture. Victor looked at me not with pity, but with recognition, with respect, with truth. Victor Halden stepped into the room of nearly 30 people as if he were walking into an emergency briefing in the strategy chamber of Halden Cyber Defense. And within seconds, Harper's luxurious party became something entirely different. The warm lights reflected off his silver hair, his cold gray eyes sweeping from Calder to Harper before landing on me. And in that single second, the once noisy atmosphere went silent, as if someone had muted the entire room. Calder froze like a statue, his hand still resting on the doorframe he had just used to block me. Harper lowered her face, her shoulders trembling slightly, as if she had just been pulled out of a mask she had worn all evening. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Victor raised his voice, loud, clear, and firm enough that even the sound of clinking glasses at the back of the room stopped midair. "Of all the people here," he said, looking at each person one by one, "I did not expect to witness this. Someone being turned away from the doorstep of his own child." A few gasps sounded. A woman covered her mouth. A man who had been secretly live-streaming jolted in shock but kept his phone pointed, because this was no longer a family drama. This had become a moment where truth sliced across the faces of people who believed themselves above others. Victor lifted his chin, his voice dropping lower, but every word landing with the weight of metal hitting the floor. "Let me tell all of you," he said, turning to the guests, "exactly who it is you just disrespected." He pointed at me. "Elliot Crane is the man who helped save my company in 2011 when Halden's cyber defense was hit by APT-32. Without his reverse engineering of that malware, the entire federal contracts infrastructure might have been wiped off the cybersecurity map of the Pacific Northwest." The room felt vacuumed of air. Whispers died instantly. A man in a gray suit murmured, "No way. That APT-32 nearly shook the entire industry." A young staffer whispered, "Crane. That name really does sound familiar." Then Victor turned to Harper, and his eyes were anything but soft. "And you throw your father out in front of me? One of the finest digital forensic engineers I have ever worked with?" Harper trembled, searching for words, but her mouth opened and closed helplessly, like a child who just broke an antique vase in front of every adult in the house. Calder tried to interject. "Mr. Halden, this is just—" Victor cut him off like slamming a door shut. "You be quiet." Calder swallowed hard, his face draining from white to ash gray. Victor swept his gaze around the room, and as if someone had flipped a switch, the elegant party shattered. Guests drifted away, some excusing themselves to the restroom, some slipping quietly out the back door, some staring at Harper with the kind of look that, just an hour earlier, had been admiration, now replaced by avoidance. A middle-aged man with thin glasses whispered to his wife, "Staying means getting pulled into a scandal. Let's go." And they left without saying goodbye. Victor turned back to me. "Elliot, come with me. We are not standing here another minute." 4 staffers, 2 women, 2 men, glanced at one another before quickly putting their wine glasses down. The one in front said softly, "Mr. Halden, I'm coming as well." It made perfect sense. not because they were taking my side, but because anyone with a functioning brain knew staying here would only ruin their careers. Victor gave a slight nod, then pulled the door open wide so I could step down the basalt stairs like an honored guest. We left Harper's house in silence, except for the jazz music still playing through the speakers, now sounding misplaced, like laughter from someone who didn't realize the party was already dead. Victor's car was parked by the gate, a graphite matte Mercedes AMG. He opened the front passenger door for me without another word. It was the kind of respect people in our field didn't express verbally, but through action. We drove straight back to Seattle to the Metropolitan Grill, the steakhouse I knew Victor only chose when he needed a real conversation. The 4 staffers followed, but kept a careful distance. Before the food even arrived, Victor leaned back in his chair, removed his glasses, and looked at me with an expression that was half contemplative, half furious on my behalf. Calder fabricated a story, he said. He told everyone at the company that you were poor, living on welfare, unsuccessful. He said Elliot Crane was just some old IT guy living off his daughter's pity. I didn't reply. I simply stared at the warm light reflecting off the dark wooden table. Victor didn't stop. And Harper, his voice slowed, heavier, she told me you were a visual burden, that she wanted to build a new image, and you, a father in a flannel shirt, didn't fit that path. I closed my eyes for 1 second. No longer. Every sentence Victor spoke felt like another door slamming shut inside my chest. And then my phone vibrated, a message from Calder. When the screen lit up, the first line hit like a cold slap. You will regret destroying my career. The next morning, Seattle was covered in a cold fog thick enough that the kitchen windows collected droplets, like log lines waiting to be read. I had not even made coffee when my phone began vibrating nonstop, a storm of notifications. The first thing I saw was an internal email from Arctics Dynamics, where Harper and Calder worked, with the subject, Video Concern Urgent Review. I opened it, and in just 6 seconds, everything that happened the night before had turned into a company scandal. The clip was so clear that even someone who had never met me could see exactly how badly I was treated. Calder blocking the door, Harper speaking loudly enough that the system's auto-caption captured the exact words, "You make me ashamed, go home," and behind them the laughter and whispers of 20 people. The video shook slightly because it was filmed secretly, but the lights in Harper's fancy house were bright enough to reveal every humiliating expression, and the only thing more frightening than the clip itself was the speed at which it spread. Arctics had more than 800 employees, most under 35, addicted to group chats, addicted to sharing drama, and in less than 2 hours, the clip appeared in 3 group channels. Funny moments, Thanksgiving share, off topic. They shared the clip of me being humiliated as a joke, and then suddenly everything went silent because they realized the humiliated man was Elliot Crane, the person who once saved Victor Halden's company from a national-level cyber attack. At 7:30, the second email arrived. It was from Catherine Jew, the HR director. The content was enough to shock anyone. Elliot, I am sorry. Calder has been lying about you for 2 years. We are reviewing everything he has told new employees. 2 years. For 2 years, Calder used my name as material to belittle someone, his own future father-in-law, just to elevate his image. He said I lived off Harper, was so poor I begged for money, was unemployed, mentally unstable, and had caused public disturbances. A deliberate, systematic character assassination carried out over years. At 8:15, the third email came. Not 1, but 7 employees from different departments wrote directly to CEO Victor and CC'd me. One wrote, Calder told me to unfollow you on LinkedIn because you were an example of a failure. I truly apologize. Another wrote, he used the story about his father-in-law as a leadership lesson during orientation. Now I feel disgusted that I once clapped. For anyone reading, this was no longer a case of a disrespectful daughter. This was the truth. Calder had been smearing me systematically inside the company and was exposed by exactly 6 seconds of video. At 9:10, Harper called for the first time. I did not pick up. 6 minutes later, she called again, then again. By noon, a total of 14 calls and a 2-minute voicemail of nothing but sobbing and shaky breathing. Harper was afraid, not out of concern for me, but because her career was collapsing beneath the exact words she used to send her father away. I set the phone down, opened my laptop, and did what I did best. Collected evidence like a digital forensic specialist. I created a new folder. Harper Calder Incident, Evidence Pack. This folder was not for revenge. It was a full investigative dossier. Call recordings, messages, videos, emails, statements, and system traces. Everything arranged neatly like a real case. I dragged the humiliation clip into section 03 and generated a J256 hash to ensure no one could alter it. I backed up the auto-caption file because it contained Harper's exact words. Undeniable. I stored the 14 missed calls in section 01. The 6 apology emails in section 04. I wrote detailed notes about Harper's expressions, every line spoken by the guests, the kind of thing we in forensics call context residue. The contextual traces wrongdoers never expect will be used against them. At 11:50, Victor messaged, Calder misplaced 2 Q2 technical documents. I suspect he did it intentionally. I sat up straight. In a tech company, losing technical documents is not like forgetting a USB. It's a sign of fraud, or worse, a security leak. If those documents involved government contracts, the consequences would be federal charges. 20 minutes later, an email from the CFO went to Victor and me. The attached sales sheet had a handwritten note. Sales numbers show signs of inflation. If auditors catch this, the consequences will be severe. Revenue fraud, fake pipeline, ghost clients, tiny discrepancies of 1 to 2% that ordinary people miss, but I saw once and knew. He was manipulating numbers to get promoted. Harper sent a long message, almost a full page at 4 in the afternoon. Dad, I'm sorry. Last night got out of hand. I read it, then I saved it. I did not reply. Because in data investigation, emotion cannot fix truth. By evening, the city was swallowed by Seattle's deep winter blue lights. I opened the evidence pack folder again. Every file was a nail. Every log was a slap to Calder's deceit. And right then Victor texted, Calder is about to do something stupid, the kind of impulsive reaction that will drag him into even bigger trouble. Prepare for the next step. I looked at my contacts. There was one name I kept for the most critical days of my forensic career. Alma Reyes, an attorney specializing in data law, compliance, and tech fraud investigations. The woman who once collapsed a 150-employee company in 6 weeks with a 47-page report. I tapped call. 3 rings. Then Alma's voice came on, sharp, calm, with a hint of a cold smile, like a server room door closing. Elliot, is this the kind of call that gets someone fired or imprisoned? When Alma's voice stopped, I stood still for a few seconds, hearing only the cooling fan in my laptop, running steadily like my second heartbeat. One sentence from her triggered something I had not touched in 10 years. Do you want to handle this at the family level or the legal level? In that moment, every feeling of hurt, every sting from being thrown out of my daughter's house, vanished. What took its place was the professional instinct that had helped me survive dozens of APT attacks years ago, cold focus. I pulled my chair closer to the table and switched on the under-cabinet light. The warm yellow beam hit the wooden surface where my laptop sat open with 3 log windows. In seconds, my quiet kitchen turned into a stripped-down war room. Low light, blue screens, folders labeled evidence pack like exhibits in a digital case file. I was no longer the father who had just been humiliated. I was Elliot Crane again, a forensic engineer who once traced attackers from half a world away. Alma did not ask how I felt. She asked exactly what needed to be. Asked, "Do you want to handle this at the family level, the company level, or the legal level?" I answered plainly, "The level where they never get the chance to repeat this." Alma paused for exactly 3 seconds, then replied in a voice as sharp as steel, "Then we play by their rules." She sent me a Google Docs file. Debt recovery template, $69,400. Alma explained clearly, "The money you supported Harper with over the past 2 years, down payment, wedding planning costs, emergency expenses, every single one has email confirmation or clear transfers. You have the right to file for recovery under Washington state law. This is a legal, logical, and indisputable step." I opened the document, looking at the number 69,400 next to the line, Elliott Crane versus Harper Crane, voluntary support recovery. In the IT world, some numbers hit like bullets. No sound, no smoke, but wherever they land, something breaks. Alma continued, "Do not send it yet. Just prepare the file. We only need Calder to push himself one more step. That will be the signal to launch the entire file." She shifted to the second front, forensics. "Elliot, I need you to do what you do best. Restore data, as much as possible, especially anything Harper or Calder tried to delete. Nothing is stronger than original data." I opened my small home server, a 3-bay Synology NAS, holding all my personal backups. I began the familiar process, email recovery. Harper had deleted old emails, the ones where she wrote, "Dad, don't sell Mom's house. I'll take care of you later." But deleting from the inbox never means deleting from metadata. I used an old forensic tool, Hexene Mail Trace, to scan the .mbox files and locate segments marked inactive. In less than 20 minutes, I recovered 24 emails Harper had deleted over 4 years. Some were promises to take care of me. Some were pleas for money. Some were commitments to repay me. All of them neatly stored in folder 04_EMAILS. Alma texted, "Good. Next. Threatening messages." I opened my Celebrite Lite tool, the stripped-down version I used in an internal investigation 5 years ago. I connected my phone and extracted the SMS file. Calder's messages appeared like an oil stain. "You ruin me, I ruin you. Don't try. I will make you kneel." And the one from last night, "You will regret destroying my career." On their own, those texts were just insults, but paired with falsified numbers and missing documents, they became a familiar pattern of someone trying to cover up a crime. I placed them in the folder 02_TEXT_MESSAGES. Finally came the video metadata. I opened the clip filmed at Harper's door using EXIF tool. The metadata appeared: brightness, timestamp, GPS, and even the camera specs of the person who filmed it. Most importantly, an owner name tag showing the phone belonged to an Arctics employee named Morgan Devlin. That was enough for Victor to verify the source, and enough to crush any claim from Harper or Calder about edited clips. I was taking notes when the screen flashed an alert. An unusual outbound connection, logged from last night when Harper's email triggered a forensic scan. I zoomed in. One glance was enough. Calder was using an Estonia VPN to send product data to an overseas server. I checked 3 times to be certain. The IP was from Talon. The endpoint was a server named Cirxline Dev, the kind of name shady operators like to use. I immediately sent the log to Alma and Victor. Alma replied in 18 seconds. "If this is Arctic's data, Calder has committed unauthorized data exfiltration. Federal charges move fast on this." Victor called instantly, no preamble. We reopened the audit. I said, "The Q4 audit was delayed 2 weeks because of the accounting department restructure." Victor replied, "Good. Then I simply say we are revisiting the prior request." That was the most important logic point. The audit was not requested by Elliot. It had already been scheduled, and Victor was merely reactivating it. No one could call this personal revenge. Victor approved a 7-day audit. I uploaded the full evidence pack version 1.3 to the secure server Alma provided. As night fell, I sat by the window watching Seattle's lights reflect over the lake. I knew. From the moment the audit was signed, Calder was no longer in the gray zone. He was standing directly beneath the spotlight, and he had no idea he was being watched. At 10 p.m., Victor sent a single sentence. "There is serious misconduct in Calder's department." The 7-day audit began with an email of only 2 lines from Victor sent to the entire product and sales division. Q4 audit restarts today. All documents, logs, and reports must be submitted within 12 hours. No exceptions. Just 2 sentences, but enough to make the air inside Arctic's dynamics heavy as lead. The innocent employees were anxious. The guilty ones turned pale. As for me, I simply opened a new log file on my laptop and began taking notes in my old forensic style. Date, time, evidence, link, suspicion, severity. In the first 3 hours, the audit team found the first irregularity. Calder had inflated the KPI numbers. He reported to the company that his department reached 116% of target. But when the audit uncovered the original files, the real number was only 83%. A familiar trick among sales, leads trying to keep their seat. But what made me stop was the altered timestamp, done sloppily, the way someone works when they assume nobody smart enough will ever dig into the 3rd layer of metadata. A mistake. On the afternoon of day 2, the audit found a fake invoice. An invoice marked Client Entertainment, $4,200, did not align with any client meeting. I opened the PDF, switched Adobe to inspect mode, and just one look at the broken pixels in the top left corner told me everything. The invoice was built from a template on randominvoice.io. Not only fake, but cheaply fake. By day 3, things began to smell serious. The audit demanded the technical documents for Frostgate, Artix's most critical project. I saw timestamps altered 3 times within 6 hours, and another file showed modified by unknown user. The auditor asked engineering, "Who has permission to edit this?" Engineering replied, "Only the product lead." And who was the product lead? Calder. At this point, Victor called me to floor 8. The CEO office door opened softly, white lights spilling onto the large wooden table. Victor looked at me with no pretense. "Elliot, tell me the truth. Who could pull this off without being detected?" I answered directly. "Someone with hidden admin rights or a shadow account." Victor frowned. Arctix does not use shadow accounts. I turned my laptop and opened the outbound log from the night before. But Calder does. The evidence was crystal clear. An account named SVC Prod Archive, with permission to delete logs and alter timestamps. This trick requires only mid-level technical skill, enough to think senior admins never check deep system logs. But I do. On day 4, the audit revealed the biggest discovery yet. Calder had inflated client entertainment expenses not once but 15 times over the past 2 quarters. A simple dinner in Bellevue turned into a luxury networking gala in Vancouver. A taxi fare of $42 became $189. I viewed the images he attached, restaurant photos stolen from Google, not matching the dates, metadata wiped manually, but still leaving traces in the ICC profile. A rookie technique he assumed would fool the admin team. On day 5, Victor and the audit team found something that made the entire meeting room fall silent. Frostgate documents had been transferred to an Estonian server, yet Calder claimed, "I don't know, maybe a system bug." I looked at Victor, then the audit team, and opened the forensic log I had prepared earlier. The line appeared clear as daylight. Exfiltration attempt, Talon node, timestamp verified, user, SVC prod archive. No denial possible. No scapegoat possible. No escape possible. On day 6, a young employee, Morgan Devlin, the girl who live-streamed the party, submitted the original clip, uncropped, unedited, to the audit team. She said plainly, "I didn't know that was Harper's dad, but I saw Calder blocking him clearly. And the line, 'This is not a place for labor people,' I think the company should know." The room froze. In Arctix's sleek, modern office, where everyone boasted about a culture of respect, that sentence rang louder than a fire alarm. Victor instructed legal to record her statement, attach the clip, and include it in Calder's behavioral review file. On day 7, the final day, the audit team compiled the findings. 1. KPI fraud. 2. Fake invoices. 3. Inflated entertainment expenses. 4. Frostgate files with altered timestamps. 5. Unauthorized shadow account. 6. Suspected data exfiltration to Estonia. 7. Public misconduct toward an individual tied to a project stakeholder, me. A list long enough to resemble a criminal indictment. I sat in the corner of the 8th floor meeting room as Victor placed a dossier nearly 2 inches thick on the table. The sound hit like a gavel. He looked around, then at me. "Elliot, thanks to you, we finally see the scale of this. If you had not recovered the metadata, if you had not captured the exfiltration log, we would still think Calder was merely irresponsible. But this is sabotage." I only nodded. Doing forensic work is not for heroism. It is to prevent the truth from being buried. By the end of the day, Victor sent me a message of only 2 lines, but enough to make it clear the next phase would be harsher. "We have enough evidence. This Monday I confront Calder directly. Prepare yourself." That evening I received an anonymous email. "You don't understand Calder. He didn't just cheat. He did something worse. Check folder Frostgate, Rev 2. You will see what the company doesn't know yet." I opened the file, and the screen turned stark white, signaling a deeper secret waiting for me. On Monday morning, the sky over Redmond was covered in a familiar slab of lead gray, exactly the color Seattle people consider the default setting of emotion. I drove my old Subaru Outback into the parking lot of Arctix Dynamics. Among Porsche Cayennes, Lucid Airs, Rivian R1Ts, and Lexus LX600s, my car looked like a comma lost inside a bold printed report. But I wasn't there to match anyone's vibe. I was there to end it. The meeting room was on the 10th floor, the executive briefing room, restricted. I stepped in and saw Victor standing with the CFO, CTO, head of HR, general counsel, and 2 board advisors. Harper wasn't there. But Calder was sitting at the corner of the table, pale, lips pressed tight like he was waiting for a verdict. Victor gave a slight nod. "Begin." I placed my laptop on the table, the pale blue glow of forensic logs filling the screen. "I will present the forensic timeline in chronological order," I said, my voice flat like a winter lake. The first slide appeared, Evidence 1, Unauthorized Deletion Log. The line read, "Delete Event. User, SVC Prod Archive, 0211 AM, Unauthorized," I said slowly. This account was not issued by Arctix. It was created manually, access level equivalent to admin, and only someone inside the product floor could use it. The CTO turned. "Calder, did you create this account?" Calder swallowed. "No, maybe a system glitch." Victor cut in. "No one believes that word anymore. Slide 2. Timestamp edits within 60 seconds. Frostgate Rev 1, modified 7:53 p.m. Frostgate Rev 2, modified 7:54 p.m. by the same ghost account." The CFO blurted, "1 minute? What exactly were you trying to hide?" I zoomed in on the metadata. The ICC profile layer showed signs of manual alteration. The room went dead silent. Slide 3. IP94.247, Tallinn, Estonia. The log line, exfiltration attempt, verified. The General Counsel asked, "Who authorized product data transfer to Northern Europe?" I replied, "No one. This was unauthorized exfiltration, and it happened during Calder's shift." His shoulders visibly trembled. Slide 4, KPI fraud, fake invoices, inflated entertainment expenses. The list was as long as an indictment. Victor looked at him. "Explain." Calder burst out like a desperate man. "Harper, she sent the reports. She told me to adjust for the vibe." The whole room turned toward one another, blaming my daughter, the one not present, inside a forensic meeting. The head of HR immediately said, "You're claiming Harper instructed you to alter KPI, alter technical documents, and exfil data?" Calder stammered, "I mean, her dad, Elliot, pressured." I looked at him. When men are terrified, they will sell out anyone, even the person they blocked at the door on Thanksgiving night. The CTO slammed the table. "We have the clip. You're blocking Mr. Crane. You think he manipulated you?" A board advisor spoke softly but sharply as a blade. "You just increased the severity of your own offenses." Calder collapsed. "Yes, I did it, but I didn't know the consequences." Victor replied, voice like a strip of ice, "Not knowing does not make you innocent." The air in the room tightened like a bowstring pulled to its limit. The CEO stood straight. "We are bringing this to the board, and Calder, you should prepare legal counsel." I hadn't even shut my laptop when Victor leaned slightly toward me and said quietly enough for only me to hear, "Elliot, the board will dig all the way to the bottom, and I believe Harper will be pulled into the next phase." The morning Calder was summoned to the 10th floor. The sky over Redmond was so thick and gray, it looked as if it were waiting to witness a professional execution. I stood in the parking lot and watched him walk into the Arctics Dynamics building, still wearing his expensive navy suit, but his shoulders had collapsed, and his steps no longer carried a trace of the arrogance he had on Thanksgiving. About 3 hours later, Victor sent me a short message. "Done." Exactly 10 minutes after that, Arctics' internal LinkedIn system announced, "Calder, Monsieur Drayden, terminated cause, data integrity, violation, KPI fraud, unauthorized access." That sentence, just a few words, was enough to end a career he had built on bragging and rotten ambition. In the tech world, being branded with an integrity violation is like having a red stamp on your forehead. No major company will dare hire you. Calder knew that, and within an hour of the announcement, he wiped every social media account he had. But employees still had time to screenshot everything. Slack group chats exploded like Lunar New Year fireworks. Calder out? The Estonia thing is real? OMG CEO went nuclear. Is Harper involved? The news spread faster than a server log hitting a bad ping. Harper was different. She wasn't terminated. But the official email sent to the entire marketing department stated clearly, "Harper Crane, reassigned to Associate Content Coordinator, salary adjustment, effective immediately." From a position almost stepping into management, she was shoved down into a role lower than a brand new hire. The room where she once stood proudly presenting her brand image strategy had now become the place where co-workers avoided her eyes like she was someone who had just detonated a whole project. By late afternoon, Harper called me 8 times in a row. I didn't pick up, sifting through the piles of paperwork Harper had left in my living room. I suddenly remembered what Mira once said, "As long as this home stands." But this home, both in spirit and in the literal sense, was cracking from the very person I loved most. Near evening, another rumor spread from inside the company. Calder was trying to withdraw his equity from a fintech startup in Fremont. He needed cash, a lot of it, because the moment he was terminated, he lost access to his RSU stock account, lost his quarterly bonus, lost his stock options, and lost the promised Q1 promotion. This was the moment I understood why Calder, someone who pretended to be experienced, would recklessly violate an investment clause. He wasn't actually financially savvy. He was just someone who pretended to know investing for status. For 3 years, Calder talked about the startup like a prestige accessory, but he never actually read the shareholder agreement. When he was terminated, he panicked. No RSS, no bonus, no ability to get hired anywhere in the industry. He went into pure survival mode. He assumed the startup would negotiate to avoid getting entangled with Arctics, assumed he was a special case, and tried to pull out early to get fast money. But startups don't respect panic. They have a lock-in period of 18 to 24 months. Pulling out early is a breach. So his action wasn't due to a real lack of experience. He had never had experience to begin with. All he ever had was ego and panic. It was his blind confidence that made him break a clause no serious investor would ever touch. Exactly 2 days later, just as expected, the startup sent a legal notice. Calder Drayden, notice of breach, financial damages claim. I wasn't happy, but I saw justice. When a man who likes threatening others finally feels the weight of the law pressing down on him, the words he once said to me, "You will regret this," turned into a pathetic joke of karmic return. But the part about Harper was what made me go quiet. On Friday night, Harper came to my house without warning. I heard the old Lexus pull up, the shaky footsteps on the front steps. When I opened the door, Harper looked like someone who had fallen off a cliff. Smeared mascara, messy hair, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. She stood there for a few seconds, then whispered a single broken word. "Dad." She burst into tears, not the controlled cry of someone feeling hurt, the cry of someone whose entire world had just collapsed under her feet. I said nothing. I simply stood still, letting her choose whether to step in or walk away. Harper stepped in. The moment she sat on the sofa, she blurted the first sentence. "Calder, he betrayed me." I looked at her. A long, heavy silence. Harper took a breath. He cheated with an intern. For 6 months. The messages, the emails, the client meetings, everything was a lie. My chest tightened, not because of Calder, but because my daughter had placed her career, her reputation, her heart, in the hands of a man who wasn't worth a single dime. Harper's voice trembled. I lost my job, I lost my reputation, I lost the person I trusted. Dad. I chose wrong. That sentence cut into me deeper than all the humiliation from Thanksgiving night. But I didn't hold her. I simply looked at her and said exactly 3 words. "I know already." Harper stared at me, confused. "You don't hate me?" I answered, "Hating is easy. Fixing is hard." Harper broke down again, painful, regretful, and stripped bare. But life doesn't stop to wait for anyone to recover. Something important still had to happen. At 7 p.m., an email from Alma Reyes arrived in Harper's inbox, with me. CC'd. Formal notice, debt recovery, outstanding balance, $69,400, due within 30 days. Harper opened the email. Her hands shook so badly she had to set her phone on the table. I looked at my daughter, not to pity her, but so she would understand the final lesson of adulthood. Consequences don't disappear just because we cry. Harper looked up at me, eyes swollen red, and asked through broken breaths, "Dad, what do I have to do to fix all of this?" I looked straight at her and prepared to state the condition that could change the rest of her life. That night in Seattle, the rain fell in the familiar December way. No downpour, no storm, just a quiet and steady fall, like the slow heartbeat of something sad. I sat by the window, my cup of Earl Grey still steaming, the streetlight stretching into long smears across the glass. A part of me knew Harper would come, not because she said so, but because of her silence that afternoon, the silence of someone desperate, yet still clear enough to look for the only door that might still be open to her. 8:47 p.m. A knock on the door, soft and trembling, like someone unsure if they still had the right to knock. I didn't get up immediately. I waited for the second knock. It came heavier, but still shaking. When I opened the door, Harper stood on the porch, soaked enough that her brown hair clung in strands, mascara running down in two dark lines. Under the warm porch light, she looked like someone who had walked out of a night where the world had twisted her heart until it snapped. Dad, just one word, but broken. I said nothing. I only shifted aside, letting her choose whether to step in or walk away. Harper stepped in. She entered my small Queen Anne house like someone who had finally grabbed onto a ledge after nearly drowning. She stood in the middle of the living room, shoes drenched, shoulders trembling. I handed her a towel, not to embrace her, but for her to wipe herself. She took it with shaking hands. Dad, her voice cracked. I'm asking for your forgiveness. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to punish her, but because forgiveness is something you choose, never something you hand out because someone cries hard enough. Harper took a small step forward, as if testing where my boundaries now stood. Dad, can I hug you, just once? I looked at her, then slowly, firmly, I shook my head. Not tonight. The words hit her like a strike to the chest. She bowed her head, shoulders shaking. Her tears fell faster than the rain outside. I know I don't deserve it. But Dad, I've been destroyed. She had to stop to breathe. Calder, he forced me to become the version he wanted. He made me replace my whole wardrobe to match the vibe with people in the industry. He made me delete old photos of you and Mom, said the old house looked poor, that it didn't fit the image. I kept silent. Harper continued, voice shaking. For 3 years, he gaslit me nonstop. He told me I was less, not good enough, that only he could elevate me. I don't know when I drifted from you. I just remember one day hearing him mock you. Your dad looks provincial, not fit for my circle. And then I started believing him. She covered her face, sobbing. I let him twist the way I saw you, and the way I saw myself. Outside, the rain beat on the roof like someone flipping through pages of memories I didn't want to revisit. I sat down at the dining table chair. Harper pulled out the chair across from me and sat, her hands still shaking. She looked at me, truly looked, for the first time that night. No pretense, no hiding, no performance. Dad, I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, the man I thought I would marry, and I lost you first. My reply was gentle but sharp like the steel I used to draw boundaries. You didn't lose me. You walked away. Harper let out broken breaths, shoulders rising and falling. But this time, she wasn't breathing like someone cornered. She breathed like someone seeing the last 3 years of her life clearly. How she had been manipulated, controlled, pulled away from family by a toxic man until she couldn't even recognize herself. I let her breathe. Those fractured breaths were necessary. They stripped away the layers of falsehood Calder had plastered onto her. When her breathing steadied, Harper opened her bag. She placed a brown envelope on the table and slid it toward me. Dad, her voice was barely audible, I sold all my personal things. Bags, shoes, makeup, the watch Calder gave me. She inhaled deeply, eyes red but unflinching. There's $6,500 in here. I want to pay back every cent. However long it takes, I'll pay it. I looked at the envelope, then at Harper. No words, no gesture, no softening. Because this wasn't the ending. This was the beginning of her learning how to be a person again. Harper looked at me, exhausted eyes aching as she whispered, Dad, will you give me a chance? I placed my hand on the table, but I didn't touch the money. And I didn't answer. I sat at the small wooden table in my Queen Anne house, the warm yellow desk lamp shining down on the $6,500 envelope, lying still like a question without an answer. All night I had not touched it, nor had I thought about giving my daughter an answer immediately. And her final question, "Dad, can you give me a chance?" still lingered somewhere in the room, not confirmed, not denied, just waiting to see what she would do tomorrow. This morning the Seattle wind blew harder than usual, carrying the scent of damp pine and fresh rain through the cracked window. Harper arrived exactly on time, 9 a.m. Unlike before, she did not knock in panic. She knocked gently exactly 3 times, like someone asking to step back into a life she once broke. I opened the door. She stood there, rain still clinging to her coat, holding a hot coffee. I assumed she had just bought it. She met my eyes without avoidance, without whining, without pretending to be strong. "Dad, I'm here to listen." I nodded. Let her in. I pulled Mira's old wooden box, my wife's, out of the cabinet. Inside were the papers I only opened when I needed to keep myself from softening. Today was such a day. I took out the formal notice debt recovery, $69,400 Alma had prepared. Harper saw it and exhaled heavily. I placed it on the table. Then I tore it, slowly, into 3 pieces, not as forgiveness, but as the ritual of setting new terms. Harper burst into tears the moment I tore it. She almost stepped forward to hug me, but I lifted my hand to stop her. "I'm not erasing the debt," I said. "I'm changing the form." Harper swallowed her tears. "What? Form?" I grabbed the desk calendar and opened it to January. I circled the first Sunday and read, then the next, then the next, and so on, until the whole year was marked. 52 Sundays, no absences, no coming to ask for money, no coming to complain, only to sit, drink tea, talk, and rebuild every brick that had crumbled. I pushed the calendar toward her. "Miss 3 without a good reason," I said, "and the entire amount goes back to the original $69,400. Harper bowed her head, placing her hands on the calendar page as if placing them on her own heart. "I'll be here," she said, voice hoarse but steady. "Rain or snow, I'll be here." I said nothing. No praise, no embrace. I simply stood up and poured tea for both of us. This wasn't reconciliation. It was the beginning of a process I controlled. We sat quietly for a long moment, listening to the rain sweep across the metal railing. Harper spoke first. "I filed for divorce." I looked up. She placed a thin stack of papers on the table. "I worked with Alma. She told me how to collect proof of the cheating. Messages, emails, fake meeting logs, even a clip of him with the intern." She inhaled deeply. "There's nothing left to hold on to." I nodded. Divorce doesn't heal. "But it cuts the rope that had dragged her through hell for 3 years. Harper continued. "I want to learn a real profession, not to rely on anyone." "Good," I said. "But you will never work for Calder again. Ever." Harper blinked. "But he's been fired, Dad." I looked straight at her, voice low but clear. "I don't mean his job. I mean you're not living the way he taught you. Not chasing the image he wanted. Not letting his toxic shadow dictate another minute of your life." Harper fell silent, then nodded for the first time that day without crying. The air settled a little, but only for a few minutes. Harper's phone buzzed. An email popped up. I saw the sender name from the corner of the screen. U.S. District Court. Western District of Washington. Harper opened it in a panic. Her eyes widened. "Dad!" "Calder's inbox. Just got a preliminary notice about a pending subpoena." I leaned forward. "Subpoena from who?" Harper read, her hands shaking. "The federal government is requesting all data related to the Estonia server in an investigation into the Frostgate exfiltration case." I closed my eyes. He hadn't just cheated KPIs. He had touched federal law on international data transfer. A slap from the law could hurt far more than a termination. Harper looked at me, truly worried. "Dad, could this mean he might go to prison?" I didn't answer. "But everyone in IT knows. Leaking core tech product data overseas? That's a real sentence." Harper sat silently for a few minutes, then said softly, "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for him. I just want you to know I realize I lived in a toxic shadow. I looked at her. A shadow is only frightening when you use it to hide. Harper nodded. Dad, I'll show up for all 52 Sundays, so I can walk out of it. I stood and began clearing the teacups. Harper understood. She stood, put on her coat, and stepped onto the porch. The rain was still falling, light, but cold. She turned back once before going down the steps. Dad, thank you for not closing this door. I didn't answer her thanks. It wasn't time. When her silhouette disappeared behind the parked cars, I closed the door and walked into the kitchen. My phone vibrated. Victor called. I picked up. His voice was low, carrying the energy of a plan unfolding. Elliot, Victor said, the board reviewed your file. I want you as a strategic security advisor, not temporary. A real role. I looked at the dark screen of the living room, where my reflection stared back, a father once turned away from his own child's door, now being asked to stand on the front line protecting an entire corporation. And I said, Victor, I'm ready. Seattle at a January dawn carries a kind of air that is hard to describe. Cold but not biting, bright but not harsh, and quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the sound of a system you have already fixed, restored, cleaned of every error log, with only the steady heartbeat-like hum remaining. That morning I woke earlier than usual. I stood by the window overlooking Lake Union, where the water lay flat like a glass surface, reflecting the sky slowly fading from deep blue to pale silver. At my age, I no longer chase titles, but Victor's email last night still made me stand for a long moment. A strategic security advisor role. Not temporary, not charity, not a way to make up for that Thanksgiving night. They chose me for competence, the very competence Harper had spent years calling outdated or not the right vibe. I put on my coat, brewed a pot of coffee, then stepped onto the porch to inhale deeply. The scent of cold pine, mist, and a Seattle morning filled my chest like the greeting of a new chapter. 9:00 a.m., the first Sunday. Harper arrived exactly on time. Her old Lexus pulled up in front of the house. She stepped out, wearing a thin coat, hair tied back, no makeup. The first time I had seen her face this natural in years. She knocked 3 times, just like last week, but this time without shaking. Dad. Harper tilted her head, her voice small but no longer broken. May I come in? I stepped aside. Harper walked in. The air between us was no longer as heavy as it had been 3 days before, but not light either. It felt like 2 people standing on a newly built bridge, steady, but still carrying the scent of wet cement. We sat at the table. Harper handed me a newly printed calendar. She had circled the first Sunday in red. I'll be here every week, I nodded. No praise, no judgment, just acknowledgement. But I noticed her shiver slightly from the cold. The wind from Lake Union kept slipping through the window gaps, as if to test her resolve. I stood up, opened the wooden cabinet by the kitchen, and took out an old flannel shirt, the one I used to wear when Harper was small, when we fixed old computers together or watched the rain fall from the porch. I placed it in front of her. She looked at the shirt as if seeing something from another life. Familiar, painful, warm. Dad, this shirt. Put it on, I said. It's cold. Harper held the shirt in both hands, as though lifting something fragile. She slipped it on. The shirt hung loose on her frame, carrying the scent of old pine, home, memory. Harper choked instantly, not with loud sobs, just one fractured breath, the kind of breath from someone who realizes they still have a place to return to, even after they destroyed the path back. Dad, Harper inhaled. Her voice rasped from holding back tears. Thank you for still giving me a chance. I poured tea, set the cup before her, then replied slowly, clearly, without softness, a chance isn't free, Harper. It is paid for with action. Harper nodded. No objections. No prideful lowering of her head. Just a nod from someone who understood a new chapter only opens when you pay the correct price. We sat in silence, but it was a good silence, the silence of two systems syncing again, not colliding, simply recalibrating for a steadier operation. Light from the window spilled over the wooden table, reflecting off the teacup and the flannel shirt. I suddenly realized something. The cold blue glow from the logs I stared at for decades had finally found its real-world version. On the surface of Lake Union, where the light reflected flatter and clearer than I remembered. Harper looked toward the window, her eyes still red but no longer shattered. "Dad," she whispered, "I'll do it, I promise." "Just do it," I said. "Don't promise." Harper gave a small smile, the first real smile I'd seen on her face after years warped by the luxury aesthetics Calder forced on her. A moment later she stood, bowed slightly, then headed to the door. Before stepping off the porch, she turned back. "See you next Sunday." I nodded. Nothing more. Nothing less. When Harper's car disappeared around the corner, I returned inside, sat at the table, and opened the journal Mira had given me on my 37th birthday. I flipped to the first blank page of the new year. I picked up a pen, and I wrote one line, simple but carrying 20 years of silence, hurt, and now clarity. Justice is not an explosion. It is a cold light that shines exactly where the truth hides. I set the pen down, closed the journal, and for the first time in many years, I felt peace, not because everything was fixed, but because I knew I had chosen the right path forward. And outside, Lake Union still glowed, a reminder that some cracks are only visible when the morning rises. I stood there, my hands still warm from the flannel shirt Harper had put on me last night, and understood that forgiveness is not erasing wrongdoing. Forgiveness is placing a period at the end of a story that has gone on too long, then turning the page without looking back. My justice is not loud, not triumphant, not a cheer. It is simply the moment I no longer tremble when I open the door for my daughter, and no longer bow my head when I look back at my own life. If any part of this story made your heart pause, a sentence, a crack in memory, or just the feeling that I've been there, leave me a single dot. So I know you are here with me, walking this path back to the truth of relationships we once thought could never break. And if you wish to stay with me for the next stories, the journeys where light not only exposes wrongdoing, but also guides a person back to where they belong. Thank you truly for staying with me to the very last line.